fourth graders for stuff that they need to know when they move up, either at the beginning of the year or the end of the year. That might be well worth it. But like, I am so proud of you guys. You're so awesome. So that's great stuff. And you also don't have to stay for the entire meeting because we will keep talking forever.
Yes.
I do have one question. I do want to thank you guys all for all the work you put in here because there's a lot in here. And I'm sorry, you guys, most of you probably already know what this is, but I'm just going to ask anyway. So you have in here like lesson design studios and learning walks. Can you just explain what that is a little bit?
I think we should let them leave.
Oh, they can, yeah.
You're welcome.
It won't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I thought Carl already gave the okay, so I just assumed they wanted to stay. Okay.
Amy, do you want me to take the picture?
You got this.
I don't know, no, Parents gotta be in there too. Good luck in course that. What's the shot?
So good. Thank you again.
Doing all the things. So excited. All right, lesson design studios and learning walks. So over the last couple of years, one of our board goals has been to implement instructional rounds. And instructional rounds are when teachers go into each other's classrooms, they see them in practice, they provide feedback about the strategies that they're noticing and ways to continue to develop student learning. Each team made a goal and then was looking for evidence of that goal as they went into the classrooms. Lesson design studios are that next level of understanding instructional practices. So what the teams will do this year is they'll meet as a team and co-plan an activity or a lesson. And through that, they're going to look to remove various barriers for students in the classroom. So a couple of the things that we've talked about is we have several teachers involved in letters training, which is around the science of reading. And so a first grade team, for example, may decide to look at one of their lessons for literacy, talk about the dynamics in the classroom, talk about ways to remove barriers for students, and they co-plan that lesson together. And then they all come together, observe the lesson, and talk it through. So not only is it of benefit to the teacher implementing it, but all of the teachers on the team have some sort of attachment to that lesson and the success and the outcome of those students. And then they work to plan their own lessons in their classroom as a result of that. Not all teachers teach reading, for example, so the other area that we're looking at is around student behavior and making sure that we're designing those learning environments to really meet the social emotional needs of our students as well. So our UA team, for example, may consider looking at how do we remove barriers to student access so all students can participate at their level and be successful in class. And they'll look for evidence during that. Learning walks are a less formal opportunity for teachers to go into a classroom and observe a colleague in an area that they want to develop for themselves. So each year teachers write their own instructional and student learning objective goals. And if I were working on understanding OGAP practices, for example, like I mentioned in the math goal, I may want to go in and observe Heather Burkett, who is our OGAP trainer in the building, and see how she incorporates that into her lesson on a daily basis. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
I have a question. So can you kind of expand on what the guidance might look like for setting academic or personal growth goals for grades 2 through 4?
Yeah, so as we're looking at our data and grouping students based on what they need, students will learn more about what their target skills are in that group. So it may be that, you know what, we're working on retelling a story with the beginning, the middle, and the end. We want to make sure that we have characters, we make sure that we have the theme, and we have the setting. And so students would know that by the end of the 6 or 8 week What I Need group, that's the target that they're working toward. They would work closely with their teacher to provide them feedback on that goal and their progress toward that. Our Universal Design for Learning team has done some professional development with our staff over the last couple of years around student goal setting, and some of our various teams have started to take that on, so we're looking to expand that a little more widely.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions. The OGAP, are you guys looking to do that as a district at all? Because I know there's the additive, I always forget it,
Multiplicative, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the fractions. Is that something that's ever in the works?
So I can at least answer in my building. So we have a trainer who is ready to train in both additive and multiplicative. I don't believe I have anybody fractional yet, and so I'm not okay. Yeah.
So OGAP, it has typically in the past few years been sponsored by NHLI, New Hampshire Learning Initiative, I think it stands for. That organization has put on trainings all over the state in the summer and made it free for teachers to attend. We believe that funding source is starting to run out, and therefore I'm in talks with SHNU to see if we can host a session. Last summer we hosted through NHLI an additive session. We have a lot of teachers that are still interested in additive. That's like the first kind of foundational elementary program they offer. Then they have fractional, they have multiplicative, they have proportional. And I think there's actually one more beyond proportional, but we want to have at least one of each session. We have teachers in the district at all different points of entry into this training program. The obstacle will become funding, so if we can partner with SHNU and offer graduate credit for it, that opens up some new financial resources to us to be able to afford. I've actually been in talks with all of the curriculum directors from the sending schools to Pinkerton, and we are going to work it out so that we have sessions offered this summer regionally. So that we are all very much trying to get in alignment with mathematics kind of programming and mathematics training for our teachers. So we send them to Pinkerton, well prepared together.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it's an excellent training. It's a framework, so it will work regardless of which program materials you go with. OGAP's a framework, much like LETRS is for ELA. So we're excited to learn about it, and it's a very hands-on type of training, so teachers leave with lots of manipulatives and ideas of how to make math tangible and concrete for kids.
My other question was probably from Melissa. The RISE acronym, is that like a placement you're looking to get for IEPs?
It would be placement approval, yes, within the IEP. So for those of you who are not familiar, when an individual education plan is developed, the very last page of that document is program placement, and that is where the student is receiving their special education services. So in this particular situation, once this program placement is approved through the Department of Education, that would become part of the drop-down menu and would be an option for students that may require that type of programming within their day.
And then can I just ask, I guess, what would be the difference between that and like a resource room?
Resource Room is one of our approved programs, as well as Learning Center, as well as Inclusion Program. So it's all defined on what programming is offered for those students within that environment, and what type of primary educational disabilities would be approved within that as well.
Go ahead.
I have a bunch of comments and then a couple questions. Love letters. I just started it for teachers. So glad that people are doing it. Yeah, I'm doing the teachers one. I did the admin one, and all it did was, yeah. It's a reading, the science of reading. I did the admin, and all it did was like tease me to do more. So love the learning walk, the idea of collaboration, the idea that that's going to help push common vocabulary, because it's more important for the teachers to be all using the same language so kids don't have to relearn every single time they do a grade. So the more vertical integration, the better. So definitely want you guys to keep pushing that. Eureka 2 versus Ready Math. I love what Eureka 2 looks like. It's so visual, especially when we had ESOL kids, it was brilliant. Ready Math is very wordy, which will help on the reading side. I do have concerns on that side, but I'm totally willing to trust and let you guys implement it and let us know how it goes. And then when you guys talked about choice and challenges in math, I'd love to hear back later on in this year of like the cool stuff that you guys are doing with that. On the second priority, that was like my shtick when I was on the strategic planning. I love the mentorship. A big thing on that was, what are you taking off the teacher's plate when you're putting more things on? So I think when you wrap things up, if you can kind of talk about, this is something we feel like we're in a good place, and then we're replacing it with this, I think that would be good to have so the teachers know like what that balance is. But like when you talk about we don't need to create, we need to like empower kids, especially student-led, totally awesome. Also, it builds capacity where the teachers are facilitating, but the kids are doing it. Priority 3, food is amazing. Soup is awesome. We have chocolate delivery at our school where you can literally call for chocolate and an administrator will drop it off with you. Very, very popular. And then a question for Jeff Mackey. Whose kickball team are you going to be on?
I did promise Central School.
Oh, okay. All right. I feel like that was the most important part of what I just said. But you guys, I love it. I think you're doing a great job with the strategic plan, so thank you.
I had questions around the behavior management software. I know it was spoken about during the HMS priority, but is it going to be rolled out district-wide, or is HMS the pilot, so to speak?
So the software plugin that we're looking at is part of Marsha Brenner's suite, and it integrates into PowerSchool. It will be district-wide, so not just at middle school, but it will help us to not only take in behavior referrals, so instead of office slips, teachers will be able to enter, but then also it will store previous entries as well as follow-up, as well as restorative efforts. So it will help us kind of track and organize all this data, and then we can of course set the categories, but it has some default categories, and it will be visible to appropriate parties in PowerSchool.
Excellent.
So it'll help us with our MTSSB data meetings, because right now we have data from a variety of sources, and sometimes that's paper that needs to then be converted into an entry, and sometimes not everything is worthy of an entry in PowerSchool.
Sure.
You know.
I had another question for you, Nicole. So
Sure.
in the pilot of these different curriculums, can you speak to what that looks like? Are select staff temporarily trained
Yes.
to roll that out?
Sure. So we have a math committee at each building. Of course, the middle school math committee are math teachers and our math specialist.
Right.
At Central School, it's one teacher per grade level. In first grade, we actually have a second teacher that's involved because she has a second certification in math specialist, and she's very passionate about math. So in first grade, we actually have 2 people piloting. But they do get a thin version of the training from the company. Inevitably, some people love that training, some people do not, but the companies really front load at the beginning of the year with, here's how everything works. They send the materials. Teachers kind of work independently to get through like the process and unpack. The math committee does meet regularly. I think the curriculum meetings are once a month, and I've been to one of them so far this year. And we have a check-in with the vendor sales rep at some point during the pilot to have more kind of granular Q&A answered. If we choose a particular when we choose a particular program, we will bring in full training for the full staff, and that will probably be in the May PD day. And we will try to get materials to teachers' hands prior to them leaving for the school year, but it's hard with the July 1 budget because the budget won't open till July 1. So sometimes companies will give us digital access over the summer, but that fall rollout will be very important, and additional fall trainings.
Got it.
Yeah. Does that answer your
It sure
question?
does, yeah. Mrs. Bernard, love what you're doing just with student leadership in general. So, all the different committees and huge fan of all that, really bringing the school pride and school spirit there with encouraging, all the students to attend sports games. That's awesome. One idea that I won't take credit for, but I'll throw it out there, is have we ever considered a student liaison like we have for Pinkerton for the middle school? Basically having, probably it would be someone in 8th grade, be the overall school student representative to attend the school board meetings and fill us in on what's happening from a student perspective.
Now we have. So yes,
Awesome.
done.
Sweet. All right. Do I have anything else? I'm good. Okay. Thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. Extremely prepared, as always.
Yeah, what did you do?
It's seen some things. Okay. Moving on. We have a school bus transportation update from Mr. Dowd. Good evening.
Just to let you know, the live stream did drop out for about a moment or two, and it was when everyone was conveniently taking pictures over here. So
well.
no one really missed anything. So school transportation update. So we are running on 7 buses for the district. We are down quite a bit. I've had some requests to have some routes adjusted, and we've been able to make some of those, and we're looking forward to completing a couple more besides that. And as the buses have very surprisingly been running on time, we're trying to keep it that way, even with just 7 buses. On an up note about only having 7 buses, our contract, I won't say penalizes, but offers an incentive to have full slate of busing available. And this month we received a credit, well, last month for September, we received a credit of $25,000 based on their lack of fulfillment on the total terms of the contract. So First Student's highly incentivized to make sure we have all of our buses.
Right.
That said, we've been doing okay with the 7 that we have in terms of performance. Our on time has been much better than in previous years, which I'm trying to reconcile that still. So just a big shout out to our bus drivers who have been able to make that happen. It's very much appreciated.
How frequently are you in contact with First Student, basically checking in to see if we have that 8th driver?
I contact them weekly, whether, yeah.
Great.
Sometimes it's not for great stuff, but I'm
That's the schedule I would encourage you to be on.
Yeah,
So that's awesome.
And they know and they're aware, and now they're financially incentivized to make sure we have as many drivers as we've contracted for. So, good stuff. Any questions?
Any questions? All good.
No, and I will note for the parents, and I appreciate everyone's patience as we were dealing with driver shortage. The big implication on this is that when we're on bus backup and double bus backup, we do have a First View app that's helpful to be able to track perhaps when your student's bus will be coming along, but when we're on bus backup, the students are not on their naturally assigned buses, and that's not how the app really works. So we've lost some functionality with that as well, but we'll try and continue to get there. So, good stuff.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Moving on to the 2025-2026 budget discussion with Superintendent Thompson.
I think we're on.
Did I skip one?
HCS
we
renovation.
are on D, HCS renovation.
Not that I'm
update
not
with Mr.
excited to
Dowd.
present.
Sorry about that.
The HCS renovation continues. These are for our 2 infill classrooms. So just as a refresher, it adds 2 classrooms between the 40s wing and the 60s wing, renovates 2 existing classroom spaces in the 40s wing. This was approved in March 2024. Total project cost as laid out at that time was $1,558,950. Costs to be paid from the Hampstead School District Capital Reserve Fund. And I've had this slide up for the 3 times that I've presented, and I'm going to continue to say that the original and currently estimated completion date is mid-November. We're on track. We may be a little bit early, but I'm very, very pleased that we're on track. So you can see, and I'll start with our second floor classroom, the new second floor classroom. You can see that we have some drywall going up. We have the nice big windows on the right-hand picture. Some of the air handles have already been installed, and you can see them in those pictures. We are also having some HVAC work done, particularly in the existing 40s wing classroom areas, Friday of this week, which is a no-school day, and Monday, so we can have a lot of that disruptive work done outside of school hours, which is really great. And you can see our new first floor classroom, not quite as exciting as the top, just because I can't get a great picture angle on it, but you can see some drywall has started to go up in that room as well. On the right-hand side, you'll see the existing 40s wing classroom, and I noted reinforcement. This is the downstairs classroom. So the building was built in the 1940s, so we're dealing with a building that's well into its 80s at this point. And we have noticed settling, our contractors noticed some settling to the tune of about 2.5 inches from the outside walls to the inside. And so you see behind you that they've shored it up. They've brought it back up to within about, I believe, about 1/2 inch. And that would be reinforced with some what they call sistering, which I think Bob spoke about last time, where the beams and the stringers that are there will just have other beams married to them. I believe we're going to be using steel for that purpose. So you can see that work is well underway as well. That is a
Green chalkboard?
I don't, Jeff, is that a green chalkboard or just the painted around? It's the paint. It's where the chalkboard would have been one time.
I was like, wow.
Yeah. You can see where the chalkboard is closer to where the picture was taken. That's the pass-through door to the classroom downstairs in between the 2 buildings. And those 2 rooms will be used, or at least are planned to be used at this time, for special education purposes. So they're going to be kind of in tandem with each other. And it's possible that some of the RISE program may end up in one of those classrooms. So it's creating some really nice flexible options for us in that space once it's complete, which somehow I'm told it will be complete in about 5 weeks. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them.
I love that we have doors on. I just can't wait until we have windows.
Windows
So-
took a little extra time.
So the joist replacement issues are taken care of or still being addressed?
They're being addressed.
They're being
Yeah.
addressed, okay.
Yeah, and it's not really a joist replacement as much as it is just taking the existing joist and sistering them with other carrying beams to help support the building and ensure another, hopefully, 8 years of use.
Got it.
And I can say just from participating in the construction meetings, and I by no means know a lot about construction, but to talk with the architect and the BPS, we didn't. It was not a necessity to address the structural issue. We could have sheetrocked the ceiling and moved on and called it a day. But looking at long term, we've opened up that ceiling, and we may not open up that ceiling again for a very long time. So as a proactive measure, it makes sense for us to take care of it now.
Yep. Yeah, there's no indication of any imminent structural failure. In fact, when they were jacking the building, the floor up with those carrying jacks that you saw, it was business as usual upstairs in what is now the library. So it's more just to prophylactic measure to make sure that we can continue to use that building in good order for hopefully the next 80 years.
Yep. I appreciate the proactiveness, definitely. Any other questions for Mr. Dowd? Okay. Now we are moving on to the budget discussion.
All right, excellent. So our official budget season will kick off next Tuesday. We'll have a school board work session at 7 o'clock in the HMS library. And really that is like the season opener. I mean, we've been working on budget since the summer, but that's the first opportunity for the board. They will meet with each individual department, go through line by line to get a sense of what the requests are for this year, provide input and feedback. And then we will come the following week to the board for the presentation of the department budgets. And the following meeting, we'll put all of these department and school budgets together, and that will be our presentation of the operating budget for fiscal year 26, which is the 25-26 school year. I did want to just throw on the board's radar items that I have updated you on, but I think are important to speak about publicly. So there's a little bit of a danger here. You know, we're still in the development of, you know, final numbers that we can speak to with integrity. So some of these numbers are a little bit on the ballpark side of things. You know, one issue that Mr. Dowd and I are continuing to deal with is the increasing cost of specialized transportation. There's been significant increases here in Hampstead, across the state, across the country, due to increased need and less drivers. It's supply and demand. So one of the items, proactive measures, we have to do something. We can't just continue to absorb these increases. It's presenting a significant challenge for districts. So one of the potential solutions that we're going to bring forward is the purchase of a passenger van or school bus. So if we were to purchase a 14-passenger school bus, we could do that for around $100,000, $96,000, or even a 10-passenger van for about $53,000. We can offset the purchase of a small bus or a van with some of our transportation savings. Mr. Dowd and I and Mrs. McDonald looked at our current budget and believe that we could save $56,000 in current annual transportation costs by purchasing our own van or bus. So that would allow us to get our return on the investment within a year or two. Still makes us nervous because the rate of increase with transportation, us purchasing a bus is not going to be the silver bullet that's going to solve. More action is needed, but we believe this could be a possible solution to help. Also, you know, we talked about the strategic plan. So we are going to budget next year for, I have approximately $6,600. We'll have a discussion as a board about what that process may look like next year. It could be similar to the process we engaged in almost 4 years ago, where we bring in someone to help facilitate a process. That process includes teachers, community members, board members, students. So we want to just get ahead and make sure that we're budgeting for that now, and that process would begin next summer into the school year. We also are having discussions, Mr. Dowd and I, about food service debt. We have been very fortunate to have some very generous individuals in this community who have written checks to help alleviate some of the food service debt that we have. But the reality is, even with the generosity of community members, we still end up carrying and writing off debt every year because some families just can't pay. And so this is something that happens annually, and we think we should we should get ahead of this and plan and budget for what we believe would be the possible food service debt, rather than just incurring that debt at the end of the year and paying it off. And we can get more specific with numbers. We were teetering around that $9,000 number. Also, you know, we've talked before about critical shortage with teachers, with administrators, and we believe that we need to build capacity within the district. Be budgeting $4,200 for what's called the Granite State Leadership Academy. This is a program that helps develop leaders. It might be a teacher that wants to become a principal that may want to become a district level administrator, or a district level administrator that wants to become a superintendent. Granite State Leadership Academy is the most efficient and cost-effective path towards certification. So Mrs. Tomaselli is currently in this program. We pay through title funds. At the conclusion of this school year, she will have her certification as a school superintendent. And we also just recently enrolled Dr. Cheney in a similar program that would lead to a superintendent certification. It is an almost impossible certification to get, and an annual $4,200 investment by the district ensures that we at least have a pipeline or a pool when if administrative vacancies should come forward. Also, there will be some teacher stipends that we'll be adding that help support clubs and activities. Again, when we talk about adding offerings for clubs and activities, we're talking about multi-tiered systems of support, ways that we can help support kids. And so, one of them that we'll do district-wide is a stipend for Destination Imagination team coordinator. This is a position that has been a volunteer effort, and we know it's a lot of time and effort, so you should see stipend request for that. We are looking to possibly add a reading specialist to our budget. As it stands right now, we are proposing contracted service increase for reading services of $261,000 based upon our current need. And we believe that if we were to hire our own reading specialist, that will reduce that number. It will not eliminate it. We will still need reading services, but with confidence, I could say a full-time reading specialist that would potentially be shared between the two buildings will reduce our contracted service obligations. The other issue we've run into, which we've talked about, is there are some Department of Labor issues when it comes to contracted employees. The longer they are employed by the district, their services are employed by the district, we run into issues with the Department of Labor because they look like they are employees. So we need to address this from a financial standpoint, and we also need to address this from a Department of Labor standpoint. We will always need contracted services. It might be a teacher of the deaf. We don't need a full-time position, or someone to come in and work with someone with visual challenges, physical therapy. There will always be the need for contracted services, but when we get to a number like $261,000 for reading services, that tells me we need to build capacity with a position in the district. We may not fill it because it's a hard position to fill, and if that's the case, then we would look to transfer those funds over to contracted services to hire somebody. So those are really, I think, the ones just to throw out there. Each of the departments and buildings has, additional requests, but these are some of the bigger ones. We are looking at the feasibility at the central school also of adding a math specialist. When we talk about a really robust MTSS response, having an elementary school with 475 kids with no math specialist, I think does a disservice to our students. That's something that we want to look at carefully, and a decision about that might be made when we look at the overall bottom line increase to say whether or not we can sustain that. So that's something I'd be looking for the board for feedback on. So that's just like a little bit of a glimpse, and obviously next week we'll sort of kick off that budget season. The community is more than welcome to attend. It's a good opportunity for them to ask questions, to hear some of the conversation, some of the questions that board members ask. So folks are welcome to attend. If you can't attend and would like for us to walk you through any elements of what we just talked about, be happy to do that as well. So I'll entertain any questions that the board might have.
So for the math specialist, if we hire a math specialist and we see that there's certain areas in tier 1 that need help, would they then be able to help the teachers to try to increase that on that side?
Yeah, so we actually have a math specialist here at the middle school, and what I appreciate with the work that that individual does is sort of the fluidity of their work, right? It's really based, it can change every year based upon student need and teacher need, right? So when we have a new math teacher, a math specialist can go in and work with them on their, discrete instruction. They can be in an MTSS model, they would be used across all three tiers. So the need is definitely there, and there's no shortage of work. What that will look like in practice, I think, is still yet to be seen. And Dr. Cheney and I, every year since we first started, have had conversations about the math specialist. There's not only considerations about the overall impact on the budget, space continues to be an issue. We may hire a math specialist. I don't know where we would put them. The good news is they typically work in teachers' classrooms, but it's difficult to add positions to a building that doesn't have room. Our brand new special ed coordinator, his office is in a closet. You can't even stand in his office because there's not room for 2 people. And now we're going to add a math specialist. So.
And the idea of buying the van. I love the idea of having that versatility and having that backstop if we have an issue. What does the training look like for somebody to drive that van, and what's the liability increase or the insurance look like on the other side?
Yeah, so we're working through some of those questions right now. So the big obstacle, and I think I've shared with the board, we cannot pick students up at their home or drop them off at their home. Any transportation that we would do without the need for a licensed bus driver is sort of transportation throughout the day. So a great example, we have a life skills program here that has a lot of community-based activities. In order to engage in those, they go to the grocery store. We need to have a bus for that. That would eliminate that need, and our requirements for that essentially would be for the staff member to obtain a health card. And there is training that is offered by the Department of Transportation that's not required, but we would obviously have that person participate in it. That's more on the van side. And then as you would move through an option where we would be looking at a school bus, the requirements would increase. And part of that is why we're having the regulations in terms of what is allowable for vans and school buses is voluminous. And trying to sort through that and see if it's something that we can do is why we are not coming here saying it is a van, it is a school bus, because we still have to work through some of that, but it will pay for itself over time.
So currently, if we want to have the life skills program go out in the community or somebody go out in the community, we have to contract through a provider?
Through Durham.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Or others. And, we have currently a teacher who would be excited to be able to, when I approached the individual and said, hey, I don't want to get your hopes up, but this is what we're thinking, to see the elation of, because it's not only cost, but it's also the availability. The teacher would be doing a lot more community-based programming if she knew the availability of the bus was there. It's not, so even if I were to say, like, okay, I don't know that we'll actualize any savings, but I know we will, I would say I think this is the right thing to do because it supports programs in special education for, some of our students with more significant disabilities.
So
that alone is worth doing.
So you would probably need to also consider that seems really loud, that if that person is out sick, you need to have somebody that's going to be able to cover. So seems like there's a lot of logistics that need to be worked through for that.
Yeah, there are, because it's community-based programming is one aspect, and then we have transportation that goes to and from services throughout the day. That's the piece where we can realize additional savings, and that exactly, Erin, is the conversation that we've been having is, All right, if we have somebody to do that and they're out, we need a backup plan. And so ensuring that we have, staff that are willing to do it, trained to do it, and even to compensate them to do it, is definitely a consideration. And I would say, I think the first step is committing the funds to purchase the van, because this is a conversation that's happening throughout the state. There's a lot of school districts right now that are purchasing vans and buses because the current transportation situation is just not sustainable, so.
So I have another question along those lines. So if, which is really loud, I can hear myself. So right now you ride share with certain towns, right? Sometimes, like you'll consolidate and you'll go pick up other kids, right? And go to, if you're going to the same school.
When available.
Will you still be able to do that? And if you do that, can you get like some funds from those towns to contribute?
Yeah, so what we're talking about, again, is more students accessing services throughout the day.
Okay.
The ride share would be, there's an out-of-district placement in Andover, and there's a student in, Sandown that goes to that same school. So we enter into an agreement with Sandown to split the cost of that transportation. That model will not be impacted because we're not talking about transportation to and from out of
Okay,
districts.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we have a reading specialist now?
Yes. Yeah, we have a regular education reading specialist and a special education reading specialist in both schools.
Just an additional reading specialist.
Yeah, so this would be, we'd go from 4 total to 5. And based upon the need, and the need always changes, but looking at the potential of splitting that to cover some services here and to cover some of the services at the central school.
And would space be a factor for that as well? Because I'm assuming if they're covering certain services, they would need a private space to be doing one-on-one or small group.
In theory, what we'd be looking to pick up are services that we currently have. So I wouldn't say we need additional space. We can utilize the space that those contractors are using now, but the space isn't great to begin with, So that is, again, another consideration is space at the central school.
And random thought about the bus, would that be able to be used for any sports?
It absolutely would be. Yeah, and I've already have had conversations with the middle school and the middle school athletic director. So the bus option, if we're able to purchase a 14 passenger, that's 14 passenger plus the driver. There are some regulations that would cap that at a lower number, but nonetheless, we would be able to get, a majority of a team there or a portion of a team there, and then have less reliance on parents to drive. So it will not solve our transportation issue for athletics. In fact, I'm really concerned about what spring's going to look like right now. But it would help. It would help a lot.
Just a couple of questions on the specialist. So I feel like I've heard 2 different things. So I think I heard you were asking what the math specialist did, and it seemed like we were asking whether or not they were almost like an interventionist versus a coach. Are they coaching teachers? Are they pulling small group intervention groups with kids? Are they some sort of hybrid of the 2? My concern always when we talk about adding people to the budget is we're adding people, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is have to cut people at some point. So I think it's really important that we understand the scope of their responsibilities.
Yeah, and I would say, because I've had this conversation often with Dr. Chain. Dr. Chain, you want to talk a little bit about your vision for how this position might be utilized? Because, bear in mind, it doesn't exist right now at the central school, so what we're talking about is creating something new, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I got it, all right. So I would love to see it be a hybrid of the two. So in a previous career, I was an instructional coach, and I know that we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck supporting that Tier 1 service, and we have students who need intervention. So I would love to be able to see this individual have the talents and abilities to service some of our students who need that intervention, as well as be proactive in the classroom and supporting teachers and students right within the class.
And I do want to be clear too, that there's a danger in me saying, we're thinking about this, right? Again, there are so many factors that need to be taken into consideration. We talked about space, but we're still waiting on some fixed costs, some of it around transportation, some of it around insurance. Remind folks at home, we had $1 million increase in insurance last year. If we were looking at a similar $1 million increase, like unfortunately, I don't think that I would recommend to the board that we add a math specialist. So it's good to have the conversation, to get input, to ask the questions that you're asking, Rich, knowing that it's a continued conversation that we're having. It may or may not materialize in this budget. And again, knowing that this is a process that lasts, several months. It may make its way in at the beginning, and then, we might need to take a closer look at it as we progress through the budget season.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things certainly that you mentioned in the strategic plan that over time we can figure out how to pay for those with grants, right? Versus, positions and grant funding always gets a little bit messy. So I think it's important that we, call attention to that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Plan
And the other one that I think I put on the board's radar before that I failed to mention that is important based on what you just said is, so we currently have in IDEA, which is our grant for support for special education, the special education coordinator position at Central School. Our goal would be to take that position and move it over to the operating budget.
There's a penalty on that, right? Was it 9%?
So the language that the feds have around utilization of funds is funds are used to supplement and not supplant, meaning we can't keep it in the budget forever.
In the grant budget.
What's that?
In the grant budget.
Yeah, in the grant forever.
Yep.
We have to move it over to the regular budget. There is some question about how long it can remain, and it's certainly something that we could look at, but really we need to, that position is desperately needed. There's great work that's happening this year and into the future, and it really needs to be, I believe, a priority for the operating budget for next year.
And I think that, I don't think you're going to see any personnel requests at all unless they're both economically
Right.
and programmatically supported. And there is some aspect of wanting to be fiscally, desire to be fiscally conservative while being able to deliver on our programming. But we're also up against some, I don't want to say geographic, but some very structural issues, particularly at Central School, in terms of trying to get that staff in a place where they can actually deliver instruction. So anything that's coming forward will be significantly economically driven as well as programmatically driven.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but also if you have a math interventionist that's helping with Tier 1 and Tier 2, that makes it so that we, in theory, have less Tier 3 special ed students, which if we have to have, then legally we have to hire another special ed teacher down the road anyways. So basically we're being proactive to try to limit that.
Absolutely. We talk about, we've had an increasing number of identification of students with disabilities. And how can we, take a look at, reducing that number? And we know we need universal kindergarten. That will help. We have some data that suggests that participation in a half-day creates gaps in learning. And gaps in learning create oftentimes the need for a child to be on an IEP. That's a reality. So universal kindergarten will assist with that. Not there yet, but we're getting so much closer. And then a really robust intervention system where when we start to identify students may struggle academically, behaviorally, we're able to respond early, and we're able to respond in a systematic way we're still working on that. And that is the core of the work that we'll do this year. Because otherwise, inaction on our part, is just going to lead to higher rates of referral. So I think, we know the work that needs to get done.
And that intervention system is proven to be some of the most cost-effective and effective for the students as well. So
Yeah.
I highly support it.
And I'll just say to reiterate what Bob said about the 15th budget work session meeting being a public meeting. I think last year we had 2 community members attend that meeting, so I would encourage the public to break that record this year. There are critics out there of how the district spends their money and where the money goes, and this is a perfect opportunity to hear the things that the liaisons, the department heads, the administrators are asking for, their needs, their wants, and the kind of back and forth conversation that we all have as board members with those people to get down to the true budget numbers that they'll see during voting day. So that's all I have. Any other questions for Mr. Thompson on budget? Okay. Moving on to policies, the second reading. So in our packets, we have the policies IC, FEH, JLCA, JLCCA, GBGAA, EBCG, and JFAB. Again, these are the second reading. If anyone has any questions or comments on any of the specific policies, feel free to speak now.
I just really like for the JLCAs to try to streamline and make it easier for students that may be in transitional environments to be able to get into the district, but also to be safe health-wise.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to accept school policies IC, FEH, JLCA, JLCCA, GBGAA, EBCG, and JFAB as written.
I will second that. Any other questions or comments on policies? All approved. Okay, moving on to board comments and correspondence.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
So something to be of note is next Thursday, the joint committee for I think it's rules, but is going to be voting on whether to accept the State Board of Education's changes to the minimum standards in New Hampshire, and those minimum standards are going to drastically reduce what the minimum standards are, including graduation requirements, removing class size caps. Something that's really important to me is education on logic, rhetoric, examination of information and how it's used, and that could affect funding at a state level. So it'll be interesting to see whether it goes through or not. They basically tabled it to get more information from last time to this time. And then we have the state conference for the school board 2 days later. So I'm sure that will be a topic that will come up depending on what happens with that. And I'll keep you guys posted. But it could greatly affect the minimum standards for New Hampshire, which I think everybody should pay attention to.
Can the public do anything?
Last time there was 8 people that went up and testified, including school board members and state educational officials, including the people that went with a recommendation on how to revise it in the right direction. But the State Board of Ed and the commissioner stayed with the recommendations that they did. I think there was probably 150 people that have testified so far that have said that it is woefully less than what we actually should have in the state. So, yeah.
Okay. I'll be looking forward to an update soon. Thank you. All right, moving on to the 2024-2025 personnel report.
Okay, so I don't have anything official on the personnel report or no action for the board. I did want to make the board aware. I've communicated previously that we were looking for a long-term sub for mathematics. We've found somebody certified, experienced, a lot of educational leadership, somebody that we're very excited to have come join our team. So that's a big sigh of relief for Amy and her team to be able to fill that position, and with someone who's really high quality. Moving on to the superintendent's report, just a couple of real quick items. Last week I had the opportunity to go with the 6th grade to Camp Lincoln in Kingston for a day of outdoor learning and team building. And I'd never been over there before. I mean, what a gem of a camp and a place for our kids to go and partner with the counselors from YMCA. It was a tremendous day. Students had the opportunity to do, a high ropes course, climbing wall. There was some nature walk, and then we actually had the opportunity to go and kayak. And there was, several moments that were just brought total joy, but one of them was watching a student who you could just tell really sort of struggled with the idea of climbing the wall and getting to the top. You got to ring the bell. To see all of this student's peers surrounding the wall, cheering them on, and seeing him get up there, overcoming that fear and anxiety, and ringing the bell, it was just a real special moment. So I appreciate the partnership that we have with YMCA. The motive here is we're sort of looking for, maybe some additional opportunities, perhaps looking at even an overnight for 6th grade. And I know, we got 8th grade set up nicely with the DC trip, 7th grade with Nature's Classroom. I don't want to overcommit, but in talks with Amy and some of the teachers, maybe that could be something that we could look at, and that would be pretty exciting. Also, just want to highlight a couple of events. One is our annual Play for the Cure, which is this Thursday here at the middle school. What a tremendous event to raise money for cancer research. Encourage community members to show up for that. And then also on the 24th of October, this Central School partnering with SOROC will have a screening of Screenagers Elementary Edition, talk about the dangers of screen time, social media. This is similar to the screening that was done at the middle school, different film last year, and again, really helps to promote these community events that we've talked about in the deliverables for the strategic plan. Speaking of community events, tonight, prior to the board meeting, we held a orientation training for volunteers, empower, engage, and educate. And we just went through all of the essential elements to make sure that our volunteers have all of the tools that they need when they come in and work with our students. I believe, and I'm going to ask Dr. Cheney,
Did we report a 200% increase in attendance? 100%. 100% increase in attendance. I admittedly will tell you, we're not at the numbers that we would love to have. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. But I think, we had, I think 8 people show up, which is 100% increase over last year.
Yeah.
We're going to try for another 100% increase when we hold this same event later this year. So
Built into the strategic plan,
strategic
right?
plan, 100% increase in parent volunteers at the middle school. So with that said, I'll entertain any questions the board may have about anything in my report or any other items.
Any questions for Bob? Okay. All right. At this point, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:55 p.m. Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.